think you can say about Steve Rogers' character, he's a hero before he takes the super soldier serum. He's got courage, he's got values, he's got all the things that you want in a superhero. He just doesn't have the size and the strength. And once given that, it makes for an awesome, awesome superhero.
We knew that the movie wouldn't work if you didn't buy Skinny Steve at the top. We're going to spend the whole first act with a scrawny version of Steve Rogers before he gets chosen for the program and undergoes the procedure that turns him into Captain America. And if that looked fake, if that didn't feel right, you would lose it entirely.
It's not about the transformation, and we thought very long and hard about how do you do the transformation in a way that hasn't been seen before. And you think about needles and pads and steam and smoke and water and liquids and all this kind of like, how do you do it? And every time you'd think about all the movies that have done it before. And so rather than it being about the transformation, what we decided it was going to be more about establishing the character beforehand. Get back! And then the transformation isn't the big deal. It's a pretty big scene, but it's sort of behind closed doors. It's really about the man that goes into the pod and then the man that comes out of the pod, and that's what the beat is in the movie, as opposed to it being, and now we see his muscles bulge and, expand and everything else.
Knowing what we wanted Chris to look like when he came out of the pod, fully transformed, we knew that he had to start working out right away. And he spent probably 3 months getting into that shape. We also knew that the entire first act of the film, he had to look like he weighed 100 pounds and was 5'7". Obviously, once he started working out, there's no going back.
Steve Rogers is supposed to be 98 pounds. He's very tiny. And then when he turns into Captain America, Chris Evans looks pretty remarkable with how he worked out and where he took his body to. So that's a tough one that we've had to do a lot of reference shooting. There's always a balance of trying to see, okay, what will work and what won't.
We sat down at the very beginning and we said, well, it's not really a visual effects movie, is it? Nah, it's just a movie. It's a movie. It's a buddy pick, and it's a superhero, but that he doesn't really have that many superpowers. He jumps a bit, he's stronger, but it's not really many visual effects. And then you turn around and we're probably going to be, 12, 13, 1400 shots, taking the original photography of Chris Evans, thinning him down, and just by frame, painstakingly reshaping his entire body for the first third of the movie.
We discussed all sorts of things. Are they different actors? No. Well, do you do a Tom Hanks Castaway thing? Well, our schedule wouldn't allow time for Chris to get that skinny and bulk back up again. So we started looking at a number of effects processes to get it done. All CG came up. We just didn't feel it was there. It wasn't right, and there was enough of that creepy factor that you would never be able to fall in love with it. And the goal was to make the audience fall in love with the character before he gets any muscles, before he puts on the costume, before he holds the shield. And in early meetings we had with Chris Evans, it was very important to him and it was important to us that it be him, that it be his performance, that entire section of the film.
I think if you get to know who Steve Rogers is before he becomes Captain America, that's what will make for a good character, that's what will make a good movie.
We wanted Chris Evans and Stanley Tucci together. We wanted Chris and Haley together. We needed Chris and Tommy Lee Jones together. And that's why the performance works.
So we're taking Chris's performance and we're actually shrinking him down and scaling him down and thinning him up, and we're doing it using a variety of techniques, but that's one of our sort of more challenging aspects of what we're doing, and something that really hasn't been done to this level before. He's a big guy, he's broad and he's got a classic V shape, and what we're trying to turn him into is the 98-pound weakling and make him shorter and thin out his face and remove the muscles from his neck and his shoulders.
We did a few proof of concept tests, and I remember showing a section of the film, early rough cut footage of the rebirth scene, where there were a few shots of Chris skinny, gets onto a table, goes into the pod opens up, reveals the muscles, and the people I was showing to, how did you add those muscles? That was amazing. What's that effect? How did you add those muscles? And I went, that's not the effect. The effect is the skinny version. They go, really? That is kind of when we all looked at each other and went, it's going to work.
It changes the performance. When we're first looking at dailies and we're first looking at our rough cut, there's very few completed shots, and you see Chris, muscular Chris, doing these scenes with people, and everyone's referring to him, you don't give up, you're skinny. And then when you start seeing the effect shots finally in the film, wow, does it change everything.
As much as possible is Chris basically shrunk. When that didn't work, for technical reasons, we photographed a body double, what we call a Skinny Steve, an English guy named Leander Deeney.
Chris is of a kind of heroic build, and he needs to be a scrawny loser. That's where I come in. He'll decide how he wants to do the scene, and I'll watch him do it 4 or 5 times, and then I do that and try and get an exact copy.
Okay, good. You do one with Chris, you do one with a double, you do one with a clean plate. Sometimes we do one with Chris and slide a green screen in behind him. Sometimes we do one with the double and put tracking markers on his face. Frankly, because we wanted to give the effects houses as much information as they needed. because we knew the process wouldn't be easy, and we knew that from shot to shot they'd have to vary their technique. So we essentially covered every technique possible to give them all the ammunition they need.
What we found out early on is that Leander wasn't quite thin enough and weak looking enough, and he wasn't quite emaciated to the point we wanted him to, so we would have to skinny up Leander as well. And sometimes when we skinnied Leander, Chris's head would be wrong. It's amazing how just a matter of millimeters will make him look like a completely different person.
It's been probably the hardest thing for us to achieve, because not only are you trying to make someone look small and you're trying to make him look believable, but you're also trying to make him look consistent. And from shot to shot, depending on the lens that you used when you photographed it or the lighting, that can change things dramatically.
And because there's so many shots, it's not like we can give them to one artist and say, you know, make all these shots look like the same guy. They have to go to several different artists.
We employ 8 or 9 companies currently, and we've got them in 3 continents. And some of those companies will have upwards of 300-400 people working on this. There's a lot of work and a lot of incredible amount of energy and effort goes into every single frame in the final movie. You know, you really are concentrating on every single pixel.
So they're constantly comparing notes and trying to make them look like the same person. So if the lighting is different, the angle is different, and the weather is different, it changes just enough so that suddenly you shrink him down and it's not the same guy.
Here we have an example of him where we've actually just literally taken his whole face and his body, his shoulders, his neck, and we've just thinned him down. We've made his cheeks more gaunt. We've changed the shape of his jaw to remove some of that strong sort of superhero jaw. We've made his shoulders much, much narrower and given him more of a coat hanger feel here in this area here. We've thinned down his neck. We've just tried to make the helmet look just a little bit big. We've shrunk the whole head just a little bit and made him just a little bit smaller. What we're not doing is just a general overall scale down. So it literally is taking the sides of his features and moving them all in, but making sure that the central features, the face, stays the same, so that what you're seeing is still Chris Evans, and you can see that, you know, it's still the same person, but it's really trying to maintain that character of what Steve is.
We are going to win this war because we have the best men, and because they are going to get better, much better.
On this shot here, we're actually doing a different technique, which is to use our body double. This is how we actually photographed him. He's got green dots on his face so that we could track where his face was looking, because we looked at this and thought, well, this is likely to be more of a head replacement technique rather than slimming Chris down. So we shot the same pass with Chris Evans' face, or Chris walking doing the same motion, exactly the same, so we shot the scene 2 different ways. And then we took Chris's head and we placed Chris's head onto the Leander body. You're beginning to believe that, you know, it's Chris walking towards us, but it's a very, very small version of Chris.
You still recognize that it's Chris Evans, and yet it's unfathomable that is half the man that he really ends up being in the movie.
Visual effects really have to be on point. If they look silly, the illusion is shattered. But you really feel like it's me.
It's kind of interesting how visual effects touches so many different aspects of filmmaking nowadays, and there's so much that we can do.
Just as maybe you start to think you see what the trick is, in the next shot it's a different trick. So you can't quite grasp it, so it must be real.
It's pretty original and pretty fantastic. To the little guys.